I stumbled upon this interesting video. It's from a channel where the man asks the question, what is China's real population? They're supposed to have 1.4 billion people, but maybe there's only 500 million. And it could just be that China lies about how many people they actually have in their country. They've built large ghost cities. People have known about this for a decade plus. I think when I was at Vice, we had discussed some kind of documentary about it. I think they actually did one. China was building massive cities in expectation of a population boom, they say, but nobody ever lived there, and the cities have remained largely empty. But I have another conspiracy theory for you that is, it's largely just a thought. Don't have any hard evidence or anything that this is true, but what if the COVID deaths are substantially greater than they're telling us? Official estimates, when you do a Google search, says that worldwide it could be around 19 to 36 million people having died worldwide from COVID. There's also the inverse conspiracy that the deaths were actually really low and they were marking anything as a COVID death. Someone got in a motorcycle accident in Illinois but had COVID. They called it a COVID death. But I don't know. What I do know is this. I have noticed this from going to my hometown, going to Chicago on the 4th of July. I have noticed this with the restaurants that shut down near me now. People are missing. The local casino used to have valet service before COVID. Now they don't. They have big empty parking garages that never get filled up. They used to have a restaurant at the horse track where you could go and order a burger or a steak and watch the horses race. Now it's empty. I asked them when they opened they opened out for like a special event once every few months. And I asked them why it was they no longer had their restaurants, and they said they can't find anybody to do the jobs. Seriously. They said we wanted to reopen after COVID, but we couldn't find anybody who wanted to work. I said, that's strange. What happened? There's a local restaurant that went out of business we used to order from, and I asked the locals, what happened? Why'd they go out of business? And they told me they couldn't find anybody to work. And I said, well, how does this make sense? Gen Z seems listless and is looking for employment. I think there is a possibility. I don't know if it's greater than 50%. I don't know if it's greater than 1%, but it does get me thinking. When someone points out, and I'll show you, this video is very interesting, shows you that the same thing is happening in China. Could it be that many more people than we realize have died? Could it be this is why in the Biden administration they were trying to flood this country with illegal immigrants? Could this be why something feels off? I went home for the 4th of July. In my neighborhood where I grew up, on the 4th of July, every street would be full of kids. There'd be fireworks going off all day, not just at night. People would be firing up the grill in their backyards, and you'd walk outside and you'd see kids down the street. I went back. There was nothing. The baseball fields were overgrown with weeds. No one was outside. Where are they? Some people said, Tim, they're just on the internet. Maybe. Maybe the answer to my questions, the answer to this man's questions about China, just everybody's online and they're ordering food. Nobody needs to be outside anymore. That seems to make more sense, I guess, right? But it does feel like people are gone, doesn't it? Doesn't it feel like people are gone? There's another question around views on social media right now. People are asking this question. We're entering the fall season when viewership should go up due to cold weather and ad rates should be increasing as well. But instead, what are we seeing? Many people are reporting their views are down. Not everybody reporting this, but it does seem to be something we're seeing in the industry. What is going on? Now, these have answers too. More and more people are online. More and more people are producing content, distributing the total amount of channels that you can watch at one time so everybody sees their viewership decline. All of this can be explained. But let me show you some of this video from this channel right here. 500 million only.
Now, I just want to take a moment
Start from the beginning here.
This video is me thinking out loud, so come enjoy the ride with me.
This is China Insider with David Zhang, 1.42 million subscribers. Check out his full videos, a half an hour long. Obviously, we're not going to play it all, but it's interesting.
Population may be under 1 billion people. This is one of the busiest streets in Shanghai, Middle Huanhai Road. And on some days, it looks like a normal bustling commercial district, but on many other days, a quiet place, peopleless during normal business hours. And obviously this wasn't the case, say, in 2018. A detailed thread on Zhihu, which is China's Quora, shows that in the past, before the pandemic, the street shops were lined with people 365 days. Now, sometimes you're just walking and suddenly get stuck in a human traffic jam. And you don't even need to see what's ahead. You already know that someone's lining up for something. And this is far from the only place in Shanghai seeing a drop in people. Metros, for example. Now, certain lines used to be packed, of course, have actual downtimes and empty train cards. In 2025, a Chinese vlogger visited the Bund, and he says that it is packed with people. This is during the Chinese New Year, but not as many as before.
He
says, as for people, not as many as I imagined. Notice what he just said. This is what got me thinking. He said, this busy district was packed in 2018 all the time, and now it's empty during normal business hours. Guys, honest question, where did everyone go? I've been asking this, and people tell me, Tim, they're just at home on the internet. Maybe. We do know that Generation Alpha is very small, but I have to wonder.
The malls are decorated, lanterns are up, Spring Festival vibes are ready to go, and the people just aren't there, or at least there's no more enthusiasm. The food shops that used to have lines out the door, there's less people now. You walk straight in, there's no queue, no pushing, no waiting. The question is, where did everyone go? Sure, if you're still taking, say, the 11th metro line in Shanghai, the busy office workers, they're still packing the train, of course, during rush hours. Or if you visit the Shanghai Road on a Saturday evening or maybe afternoon, and you might still get the foreign tourist or the local crowd. During festival seasons, of course, there are still people around everywhere, because it's China. And even in metro stations, it still looks like there's plenty of people. But something feels like it's not the same as before.
He missed that jump cut. You hear that? He stuttered and didn't cut it out.
Something feels
off.
No
disrespect, brother.
Sure, there's still people, lots of them in China, everywhere, but just not as many as before. Okay, now maybe everyone just went back to their homes for the holiday.
You see what I was saying? I had the exact same thought about being in Chicago that he's talking about with Shanghai.
Maybe during the Chinese New Year season that hometown is the destination to celebrate. That seems all right, normal, right? Migrant workers going back to the countryside, smaller towns filling up, and bigger cities get quieter. But here's the problem. By this time of the year in China, from those videos during the Chinese New Year, by that time, they should all be back. The factories will be running, offices will be open, schools are in session. And yet on the ground, you see people keep filming clips that basically look like it's not the right time. You have thinner crowds, quieter streets, half-empty metros. And here's another part where you feel it, the rental market. A shop owner in Shanghai says back in the days, his location was insanely competitive. One little unit, 10 people will be fighting for it. But by early 2025, not only are many shop fronts sitting empty, even with rent cut in half, nobody seems to want them. Here in this video, a restaurant owner in Shanghai had to close one of her food places after nearly 10 years. Why? Well, one of the factors is that in certain months, 70% of the office buildings will be empty.
An important thing I want to point out with everything he's saying, because it aligns with so much of what I've been thinking about here in the United States as well. He's not just saying that China's population could be 500 million, down from 1.4 billion. He's saying it used to be higher, and he's asking, where did everyone go? I have this question. Where did everyone go?
Now, this isn't just Shanghai. Landlords in Beijing, Guangzhou, Wuhan, Hangzhou, Shenzhen, and Nanning, these are all major cities in China. They're all telling similar stories.
呢度一間，前邊仲有兩間，又係空置咗嘅。呢一欄全部都冇鋪頭嘅，前面都係好冷清啊！想當年疫情之前，世貿天。
Before the pandemic, this place was rather busy. I give you this article from PolitiFact. Coronavirus patients are being cremated alive in China. False. February 25th, 2020. Chinese billionaire floats conspiracy about coronavirus cremation. In a Facebook video published February 25th by a page called China Declassified, asserts that coronavirus patients in Wuhan are being cremated alive, the Chinese city where the virus, officially known as COVID-19, first broke out. The 15-minute clip starts by showing two people wearing face masks in a car, speaking Chinese. A woman who is purportedly a Wuhan resident claims she witnessed Chinese officials put a coronavirus patient in plastic bags while still alive. We heard a lot of this. And there were reports, I don't know if they have it in this, but I pulled this up because there were stories about certain heat and chemical detection in the atmosphere that people were claiming were crematoriums running 24/7 in China. It's hard to believe, and I don't know that I believe it. Just that these were the conspiracy theories at the time. So why now are people saying before the pandemic there were tons of people and now there aren't?
應該都幾旺下嘅。咁落去成個商場都可以執埋啊！
Looking at smaller towns, streets are empty, businesses are closed. Back in the 1990s, when China officially had only 1 billion people, everywhere was packed. And you were afraid to go outside because anytime you go, you were dealing with bumping into people.
You hear what he just said? Let me pull this up from CNN. Satellite images capture crowding at China's crematoriums and funeral homes as COVID surge continues. Here's the point. I'm not suggesting, as that conspiracy theory does, that they were capturing people alive and just setting them on fire. But we had seen these reports. Look at this. Is that like a new parking lot? Look at this. Satellite images taken over a number of Chinese cities have captured crowding at crematoriums and funeral homes as the country continues its battles with an unprecedented wave of COVID-19 infections following its dismantling of severe pandemic restrictions. This is 2023, and it follows similar stories about satellite images capturing crematoriums operating at high volume. The question is this. Did more people die in China, in the United States, or somewhere else than they actually let on? I'm not suggesting they intentionally were killing people or pulling living, like healthy people and killing them. I'm saying maybe they didn't want to panic.
Now, we're told that right now there's 1.4 billion people. So why does it feel emptier?
Yep.
Where did the 400 million people go? Officially, the 2023 population statistics say that China's total population is about 1.41 billion people. Now, people in mid-sized or larger cities count for about 560 million. People in smaller towns and rural areas count for about 850 million. Now, I just want to take a moment to break down this misconception that you might have when it comes to personal perspectives on their surroundings. It sounds hard to believe that if you lived in a large city and you say that, or we claim, that you've lost, say, 1 million people. As let's say a city like Shanghai, 25 million people. Losing 1 million people or 1 million people going somewhere else sounds like a lot on paper, but it's actually not going to look like much when it comes to such a great scale of people. Here's a great example using the sort of outside China example, the perception of population, that is. New York City has around 8 to 9 million people. Since 2020, around 500,000 people have left, moved to other states. Excluding those that passed away, of course. New York City before the pandemic often required you to line up for a restaurant for like 2 hours, or maybe it takes a huge amount of time to go from one place to another. Now, many places don't even have lines. And traffic is much worse going across the Holland Tunnel back in the days into Manhattan.
And they've created walking markets in New York, in Manhattan, following the pandemic. There are certain areas where the street is closed permanently, and it's just, you walk down and it's markets. How is that possible in a city notorious for its bad traffic? I got questions.
Now, we barely get congestions. I'm not saying that there's no congestions at all. I'm only saying that during rush hours, you do get those things, but many times more, it's pretty okay. You don't feel like you're losing 500,000 people in the city. So is that also the case with China?
He didn't quite catch this. And this is my point, watching this video. He points out that New York reportedly lost 500,000 people, but now there's less traffic, there's no lines. And it's amazing. The immediate assumption is we lost, 1 million people in China, and now everything's empty. That means that a small population decline makes everything feel empty. I'm like, or the numbers they're giving you are wrong in the US and in China?
Well, as it turns out, no. Let's first break down the idea that people moved out of the cities. So if the cities in China feel empty, relatively to before, Are people all going back to the villages? Well, no.
I do have a point before it gets back to the villages, though. There is an easier answer. Everybody is just hikikomori, right? If you don't know what that means, they live in their bedrooms, they close the door, they order online, and they're working remote. Remote work surged in 2020 during the pandemic, and the reason everything may seem empty now, because people are doing remote jobs. But how many remote jobs could there really be? It doesn't quite make sense. It doesn't all add up.
No. It seems logical on paper until people started going out to film those villages in the countryside. One person goes to a place in Zhejiang called Siming Mountain Village. He introduced it on camera like this.
这里呢，现在也被称之为无人村，
This is being called a ghost village
因为这里
because there's no one
空无一
here.
人。
And there's many of these on Chinese social media. And on camera, you see there's paved streets, there's neat rows of houses. Some of them look pretty new. There's a public square, there's a standalone villas.
I bet we have this in the US too. People just don't go and document this stuff.
But not many of these villages seems to be inhabited. But this place actually has a unique story because if you go on the Chinese Wikipedia, Baidu, this was once a proper, prosperous place. And this place was even named a model village in the province of Zhejiang. In 2006, the village had 413 households, about 1,100 people. And it was once called a model prosperity village. And this is supposed to be the demonstration of all villages to have this moderate prosperity. So how do you go from a model village to a no people village? Well, there's even an article claiming that this was once some sort of a high-end strategic relocation of the entire village into the town. But it never explained where those people actually went. So where did they go? Mars? Parallel universe?
They're dead since the pandemic. This is the question that I have. I'm not saying it's true. I'm not saying I know it's true. I'm not even saying, like, as I mentioned, greater than a single digit probability. But if before the pandemic people are everywhere and after the pandemic people are nowhere to be found, maybe the death toll was substantially higher. If you're finding empty villages, if they can't reopen businesses, if we're asking ourselves why it is so difficult, I think the first place you go to is, was the death toll not accurately reported? And then the question you'd say, like, well, if that was the case, why wouldn't they tell you the actual death toll? Didn't they want to fearmonger? Not to the point where people hide, shut everything down. Here's the reality. We heard in the media over and over again that COVID's mortality was really low, and people didn't really think that much about it. Point two, I think it was like worse than the flu. Serious, for sure. The New York Times had some estimates that it was substantially higher, that the death toll could be in the single-digit percentages. What if? And I'm just saying, what if? Okay, YouTube, don't get mad at me. What if the death toll is actually substantially higher, and they reported it lower because they were concerned that if people genuinely believed there was a 5% mortality, they'd stop working and hide. Now, I know you're going to say, but Tim, they shut everything down as it is. But there was a certain element, there's a certain degree of people who needed to keep working and not think the apocalypse was happening. Because if people thought the apocalypse was happening, they'd get in their cars and they'd drive to the country and go hide. They wanted them to stay indoors, think it's not that bad, but not go outside at the same time. So they said, it's high, we're going to lock everything down. Hey, how about this? I don't know, though. Maybe I'm wrong about everything, right? Maybe the logic doesn't always add up.
Multiverse, or simply disappeared. Now, if people are disappearing from cities and villages, where are they going? At the same time, there is one place that seems to get busier: crematoriums. A funeral home worker in a county-level city in Guangdong posted a video in 2024. His county had a population of only 300,000, but he says that the funeral home is packed every day. You need to take a number and get in line to handle your loved one's cremation. Now, outside of China, media reports show similar things. For example, in March 2025, The Guardian questioned satellite imagery showing long lines of vehicles lined up outside of crematoriums and funeral homes after China ended its zero-COVID policy back in late 2022. And furnaces were running around the clock and still couldn't handle the number of bodies. But here's the key question. How many bodies are we actually talking about? In the official 2022 to 2023 statistics from the Chinese Ministry of Civil Affairs, one thing is conveniently missing: the number of cremations. That line just simply vanished year over year. What's actually the reason behind that? Well, some say it's just an economic downturn. People don't go shopping. Perhaps they don't go outside, so the streets look empty. Crematoriums, maybe it's because of the aging population, which is another big issue. It also doesn't answer the question because the life expectancy of Chinese people have gone up. Now, others say that maybe things like e-commerce, everyone's buying online,
Yep.
so brick and mortar shops die or shopping streets look empty. But again, these are all true to some extent, but it doesn't answer the full picture. Now, remember, China's
Yep.
rural and smaller town populations are officially around 850 million. So, if anything, the outside of cities areas should be more populated. At some point, you run into this uncomfortable conclusion, which is what I have come to, is that if there is a large-scale population change, something undocumented, the only actor with full data is the Chinese Communist Party. No private company, no independent institution, or even a full national movement can be done to change that. Only the Chinese government can get the data.
Okay, my dude, you needed to add creepy, dark, low-tone music to this video because this is scary-ish. I say ish because I'm not going to swear. For those that aren't familiar with how we avoid swearing on this show, dude, this is giving me this is creeping me out, dude. Could it be that governments around the world mask the true amount of death in a desperate Malthusian bid to get population down? Remember when they ran those articles saying the world is healing?
And so, of course, from data collection to the final publication in China, everything is extremely opaque. Population is the foundation data. It determines economic potential, labor force, military manpower, and market size. It is literally the bedrock of national power. So, of course, you can understand why the CCP would manufacture numbers or to lie about this kind of stuff. Now, other countries' experts are obsessed with the question, is China's population really 1.4 billion?
I think this guy's taking a very Chinese-centric view of this phenomenon. And the reason why I wanted to highlight this is that I think the bigger picture is well outside of just China. Look at this one. This is amazing. China's mobile carriers lose 21 million users as virus bites. Dude.
Number. So let's just keep going.
Look at this.
Now, we know that raw salt includes industrial salt, exports, inventory, policy decisions, and all of those things, right? So it's just, again, another piece of the puzzle that something doesn't add up. Some other numbers. We have Chinese mobile carriers reported a cumulative loss of 21 million registered numbers at the beginning of the pandemic. Now, the official reason is that there were many migrant workers who moved back home, or you have people with multiple cell phone lines, so therefore they canceled that. But
BS,
really
dude. We talked about this during COVID. When these stories were happening, we covered it on my morning show on IRL. Why were mobile carriers dropping off tens of millions? It made no sense. Some people were arguing, well, now that they're at home and they're on their home internet, they don't need to pay the bills for this anymore, and they're not working, so they're canceling services, or they had multiple lines. That doesn't explain 21 million people in China.
Case so common in China because this happened at the height of COVID in 2020. Since a mobile number in China is attached to everything, right? WeChat payments, banking, every app that you want to log into, video games, or whatever other apps you use, unregistering a number is really not that common. And then there's also the cremation math. In 2019, UN data says China's natural death rate is about 7.2 per thousand, with a population for about the 1.4 billion mark. So that's around 10 million deaths per year. Cremation rate was about 52.4%, so roughly 5.2 million bodies were cremated annually in China, and 4.8 million were buried. So that works out to be about 430,000 cremations per month. Now, during the late 2022 COVID wave, workers, so this was after they announced that they were shutting down the lockdowns, workers at crematoriums all over China reported workloads of 8 to 10 times higher than that of 2019 levels.
Okay, so this part, I didn't really make it clear, but because in 2020, China didn't reveal how many people were cremated, we can only use the before 2020 data, which is...
Yo, this is a CNN article. China fails to release cremation data for late 2022 when its COVID-19 outbreak raged. I'll tell you this. One thing that's true. Asians are more susceptible to COVID. I'm Asian, a little bit. I'm 20% Korean, 5% Japanese. And I got COVID real bad. And they say it's because Asians have more ACE2 receptors in their lungs, making it easier for the virus to latch on to infect you. I got COVID. It was bad. I was shaking. My body temperature dropped. And long story short, I got monoclonal antibodies. And that basically cured me. It was nuts. It was like an over. I was bad. I was shaking really hard. I think it's my body temperature was so low. We called local hospital. They said it's a virus. Stay home. It was like the worst illness I've ever had. But for a lot of people, they're like, it was a cold. Interesting. What if the actual play with COVID was that it was intended to kill large portions of the overpopulated Chinese countryside? What if the virus was intended to reduce Chinese population, but they knew that the virus would actually end up killing many others in other countries, but the greatest impact would be on China? With 1.4 billion people estimated at the time, China was viewed as largely being overpopulated. Now, I don't know. These are all just silly ideas, but I'm going to wind things down by saying this. I definitely recommend you watch the full video from this guy's channel. This is China Insider with David Zhang. He goes over a lot more than just I did. I feel like the question of what is China's real population while talking about COVID, pandemic, and mass death kind of buries the lead there, brother. Still interesting, though. The question I have, similar to his, is something else going on? And I don't know for sure. What do I know? But it is interesting that while all this is happening, the Biden administration brought in an estimated 11 to 20 million people. The border was being flooded with people who were not being vetted, and they were basically refusing to deport them. The question is why? Why were they loading underage children onto planes and flying them to various cities? Why were they trying desperately to increase population? Could be simple as nobody's having babies. Or it could be as more terrifying as more people died during COVID than anyone actually wanted to let on. Oh, again, I know. People are going to say, what do you mean, Tim? These people were wearing masks for years. Taylor Lorenz is still doing it. They certainly overreacted. Perhaps, but that's why I'm not going to argue that all this is definitive or that we know for sure. But what I would say is you can still make the logical argument that if people genuinely believed the pandemic was the apocalypse, if they were told the death toll was 20%, if the mortality rate was 20%, they'd flee. Work would shut down. It would cause total global economic implosion. And they wanted people to keep working, believing that it was bad, but not that bad, but you still don't want to get it, right? Right. Then there's the question of why the mandatory vaccination. Why? Interesting. I made the argument that you can look at it a couple different ways. There are a lot of conspiracy theories. One of them would be they were bioengineering these viruses. There was a lab leak on accident, and they knew how bad it was going to be. And the reason why they rushed to mass produce a vaccine was because mortality was substantially worse than they were letting on. But panic would be worse than the disease. That's why they so desperately told everybody, get vaccinated, get vaccinated. Some people believe the vaccine was the conspiracy and there was no virus. It was actually just the vaccine doing it all. I don't know that I believe that. I honestly don't know about any of this. The only thing I can really say is we can speculate all day and night. The question is, I have seen exactly what this guy pointed out, but in the U.S., he's saying in New York, there's no more lines. There used to be a 2-hour wait for a restaurant. Traffic is not as bad as it was anymore. They have shut down whole roads in Manhattan for walking markets. What's going on? I don't know. I really don't. Maybe it's nothing. Perception is reality. Maybe it's nothing. But you tell me. Comment below. Let me know what you think. Again, I recommend this guy's channel. Check it out. Smash the like button. Share the show with everyone you know, my friends. Make sure you subscribe if you made it this far. Thanks for hanging out, everyone. And we'll see you all in the next segment.